This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher, as always, for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Hey.
What's going on, man?
Well, it was kind of a letdown today. April 12th, of course, was Armageddon Day, or whatever you call it. No, Bad Lock Day. Bad Lock Day.
Oh, the bad lock.
Which quickly became Sad Lock because it wasn't, I think this was an example of the hype cycle, setting everything up. It was pretty much just a man in the middle of, Samba or SMB shares on your Windows or Linux boxes, which you shouldn't be exposing those things to the outside world anyway. So it only had a CVSS score of 7.1 or so. So it seemed to be much ado about nothing. There were some other ancillary things, but yeah, it was.
It's not that bad lock.
It was not that bad. Or hype lock. I saw hype lock, sad lock, and all that. So
yeah. I didn't read any of the technical stuff about it. I figured I'd, let the professional article readers read it and give me a summary, and then if I'm intrigued about it, I'd go read it.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I did with some of the former ones. But
yeah, you can go to badlock.org. They have all the CVEs out for it there. But yeah,
okay.
We're not here to talk about bad lock. I was just
I did notice that we got some interesting tweets on our podcast last week when we talked about social engineering, a little bit like that, right?
Yeah, that was interesting. Who was that? Zero Fox, who's one of the I2P folks. He said he appreciated the InfoSec analogy to tourists raising their voices at users, not just yelling "vuln," not helping. Which that was exactly my point. It's like no matter how much, even if we raise our voices and yell the same thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to get it, that kind of thing. So making a lot of noise doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make yourself heard. You have to learn to speak the language of the user or the manager. So
how do we make that better?
I don't know. We should probably introduce our guest who is going to help us figure that out. Her name. Oh, yeah, that was a segue. See how that works? Yeah. We have Dr. Hend Ezzeddine. She's a doctor. And she is here to discuss hacking the human. She gave a talk at B-Sides Austin, where Mr. Betcher was volunteering, titled "It's Not Just About the Technology, It's Also About the Psychology." And welcome, Hend, to the podcast.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. So you gave a talk at B-Sides Austin, but we'd like to find out a little bit about your background and where you came from. So if you could fill us in on a little bit of that, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I'm the cybersecurity practice director at ExpressWorks, which is a change management consulting company. We have been focused quite a bit around cybersecurity, and more specifically the human element and the cognitive behaviors, and how we can shape more safe behaviors and reduce the human error. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. So where did you get your doctorate at, and what is it in?
So I graduated from Laval University at Quebec City, Canada.
Okay.
My PhD was focused on building organizational capabilities to launch disruptive innovations.
Wow. Okay.
So I did study Apple, Dell, Colgate, Palmolive. I had quite a bunch of organizations that I did study in my PhD.
Very cool.
Holy moly! Can you put that in layman's terms? Can you say that again? I didn't catch what you did.
So I was always wondering how come companies like Apple can launch a new product that would completely create a new market with new customers. And it came down to, well, how can they do it and how can we replicate that? So I looked at the whole organizational aspect of innovation, and how can you be well positioned to launch disruptive innovations.
Okay.
Disruptive innovations. Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
That would definitely sound like a podcast for yet another time. So we'll have to keep that one in mind.
So one of your stats is there's a 46% increase in 4 years, right? In reported attacks. Is that? It says increase in reported attacks per year per company. And is that the Ponemon Institute that put that out?
Yes. So it's quite alarming how much the human aspect of cybersecurity is overlooked, considering all the statistics that we have seen, especially over the last 5 years. So we look at basically 84% of cybersecurity incidents are non-technical in nature. They are usually driven by either unsafe behaviors or people making errors and mistakes. And we talk a lot about the insider threat, and that's because 66% of these incidents are directly related to either current or former employees or contractors. And I mean, the human element is very present. It's quite a big threat, and despite all that, we see increase in spends around the technology, acquiring more technology for cybersecurity, but we don't pay quite attention to getting the users better at avoiding these mistakes and falling through the traps of spear phishing. So that's basically the area where we're trying to do more work to help protect the organization and turn your human element into your first line of defense, as opposed to relying on the technology alone.
So you say 90% of the cyber attacks could have been prevented if you mentioned the human element. Is that just people keeping an eye on each other, self-policing, or is that, just understanding your environment? Hey, why is that guy, at a computer at 5 p.m., on a Friday what do you mean by paying attention to the human element?
So it's more about understanding the pitfalls that hackers try to exploit. So we do talk about deception being an art, but I think it's more of a science than an art. And that's why we see it repeated many times successfully. So there is some science to that madness. And there are some scientific fields that help explain how people react to a security communication or message or a spear phishing email. And hackers have become very familiar with these pitfalls. And that's what they use to basically be very successful. And they find it much easier hacking humans than penetrating a technological wall.
Okay. All right. So you were talking about the influence of people in spear phishing. That also extends to, other electronic communications, right? I mean, it's not hacking, but I mean, social engineering aspects. They were talking about in the news recently, they had a Minnesota Burger King that had their windows smashed out because someone was able to convince them that they were a fire department official, and there was a gas leak building up in the building, and the only way to keep the building from exploding was to break out all the windows. I mean, how do you protect against a human element in that respect, where it's like all the guy had to say was enough to make them convinced that he was a fire department official, and now they're busting out $10,000 worth of plate glass windows because they don't want the building to explode? How do you protect against something like that?
Yes, so making people aware of how their brain process information, how they are reacting to, like you said, a social engineering attack that is not necessarily making use of computers and technology, but it takes only somebody who's going to wear a uniform that shows some form of authority. It will help people be more aware of their weaknesses, and it's going to bring them back to being more alert and more cautious about trying to validate that person identity before they jump in and try to help or get into that emergency situation. Because what we see for spear phishing attacks, usually they are trying to exploit some form of an emergency situation where they know people are going to tend to try and help.
Sure. And that goes along with when it was about 6 months ago, we had Miss Megan Wu Totenkopf on Twitter. She was talking about decision fatigue. So the person on the phone was exploiting a possible crisis situation, and those people, their decision-making capability shut off. So the first thing they thought was, well, we don't want the building to explode, so let's break out the windows. Is that just an education issue? One, you would have smelled the gas. Two, there's enough holes in a building that it wouldn't necessarily explode like that. I mean, is education really the key to this? And we talked about that last week with user training.
Yes, but there are different forms of training and training that's going to lead to shaping people's behavior. It has to do more than just, like you said on your podcast last time. It's not just one CBT that you take once a year, which is basically what is required from most employees. And that's what we see in all the organizations. Just you have one CBT that you take once a year and you are compliant from a cybersecurity perspective. But what happens is after a few days, we tend to forget what we have learned. We are no longer paying attention to maybe falling a victim of a cyber attack. And that's because when we are focused on something, humans usually are bad at multitasking. Yeah. We have very limited working memory. Our attention span is about 8 seconds where we can focus on one specific thing. So we get distracted easily. So the idea is, how do you train the brain, the eyes, to be able to basically spot any warning signs and these red flags, and that's what's going to make the user stop what they're doing and be more alert and pay attention to any potential attack signs.
So how do you train the brain?
So there are multiple techniques in other fields that you can use. And I always say you have to get very creative. So some of these, for example, we know that the brain visual capacity tends to diminish after seeing the same warning message more than one time. And that's why usually people click through security warnings within 1.7 seconds. So the brain is just like not seeing or not realizing that there is a security warning that requires our attention, and it's going to require a decision-making process. And we call this phenomenon habituation. And basically the way we can counteract that is there is a research that has been done by a team of engineers at Google, and they are recommending that you switch the look and feel of your security warning message by just making some variances around the colors, the way the message appears on the screen, using noise, and all that is going to basically help refresh the visual memory in the brain. And it's going to create that surprise effect so that the people stop and consider what exactly the security warning message is telling them.
So one time it'll be a gray background. The next time they click on that link, it'll be a blue polka dot background?
Something like that, yes.
Okay. And would it be good to move it around on the screen or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing that we can do to basically counteract this, like you said, the decision fatigue, would be a choice architecture. So if there is an external email that's coming, maybe defaulted to the junk folder or a spam folder, and then the user will go at their own pace, and they will basically examine what emails are in this folder, knowing that I am already in a danger zone. So I need to make sure I am very careful when I open an email and not access any link. And this is one way of basically minimizing the decision-making process of the user, especially during the day when they are busy multitasking and working on multiple things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There is another technique. So gamification is becoming quite popular in the cybersecurity field. So for example, Salesforce, they have been using that to bring more awareness for the users. So it gives them an incentive. It motivates them to be more on the defense side. And they have been doing that for quite some time. And the statistics show it's very successful at making users more aware. So they have reported that 50% users have been clicking less on links, and 82% more users have been reporting spear phishing emails. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to basically not click on the link, but you also need to do the proper action to forward that email attachment to your IT cybersecurity team to make sure it gets analyzed and they can identify the threat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I know my friend Lenny, in his organization, whenever they get hit with a targeted attack, maybe 10 or 12 users, he's lucky if one of them reports it.
Yeah, and those are very hard to detect because hackers now are much smarter in how they approach users. So you don't see those massive emails that are targeting 100 of users at once. It's going to be just a few so that they don't get detected.
Well, Ms. Betcher, is Lenny's company is it the same 10 or 12 people that are getting hit? Because, you can mention, Hend mentioned the gamification. There's probably positive reinforcement. I myself would probably use a cattle prod of some kind. Something like that. Is it always the same 10 or 12 people that you can, increase the amount of training that they get, or is it always 10 or 12 different people?
I don't know. I didn't ask him, but he, gets them about every month or so. When you mentioned that they're really skilled at these targeted attacks, it reminds me of a video I watched recently where this reporter asked a couple of hackers at DEF CON to hack him. And have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah.
So they used, got their Twitter account, got his girlfriend's name, was actually able to extract his address from his dog's dog tag on an image that he posted. And then they called his cell phone company. They spoofed his phone number, and they were able to basically own him in that respect. And then a technical hacker sent him a certificate spoofed from, I think, on online, like he had a website from the company that built his website or that hosted his website. So they social engineered him to get him to install I'm using air quotes, certificate. And they basically controlled his digital life from that point on. So yes, they can be very, very targeted if needs be. And, they can be very good. I mean, spoofing their web service provider, saying that they needed to install a new digital certificate on their website was pretty good.
Yeah. So Hend, you mentioned what in your slides you mentioned what hackers try to exploit, and I kind of laughed because I think we said a lot of this last week. The psychology is most users want to be helpful. So when you were mentioning about the thumb drive being put into the box, a lot of them are just trying to figure out if there's, data on that thumb drive that they can use to get that thumb drive back to somebody's, because somebody's entire life could be on that thumb drive.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't understand was the most people are less afraid of a risk they choose to take versus a risk that has been imposed upon them. So they're depending on what they consider to be a risk versus what the business considers to be a risk.
Yes, and also the decision of the user to basically, yes, I know you have warned me that there may be a malware in this attachment. However, I do choose to move forward and download the attachment. Therefore, it is my decision.
Is that the "it won't happen to me"
Yes.
idea? Okay.
Yeah, it's because we usually tend to think when we are in control, whether we are driving a car,
sure,
or basically behind the screen and clicking on links and emails, we tend to think it's not going to happen to us; it will happen to somebody else.
Okay, so that's just a lack of the company's culture to make sure that the risks of the company aren't aligning with the risk of the person. The person, they don't think that they're going to be useful to a hacker because I'm just a personal assistant, or I'm just the intern who's fetching coffee. But I don't, if I click on this, ad or this, this attachment in this email, it's not going to bother the company because I'm just an intern.
Yeah, and we tend to downplay risks in general.
Mm-hmm.
We also think that we are less at risk than other people, just like we think we are better driver than anybody else on the road.
Yeah.
So we also so security is a very abstract concept. It's hard for us to give it justice because I don't really know what's going to happen. And telling me that the organization data is at risk is not as powerful and motivating as saying that by putting the organization at risk, you are also putting your own data at risk. Mm-hmm. Most statistics show that people use company assets to do their personal transactions, whether it is banking or accessing healthcare websites and things to that effect. So, for example, in the Sony attack, a lot of employees have lost their personal data. And when it hits closer to home, that's when people tend to pay more attention. And it's not because they're not good employees or they don't care about the organization. It's just that they don't realize or perceive the magnitude of the risk if it's not related to something that they can relate to, something that is personal.
That's because most people are, you don't use that term as the glass half full or the glass half empty. Most people are optimistic about, clicking on something, it's not going to happen to me. That's an optimistic point of view instead of, well, I shouldn't click on that because something bad will happen, which is a pessimistic point of view, which for most people, that seems like what an InfoSec person is. It's not like hey, I'm going to click on this, what can happen? It's the pessimistic view. We always seem to take that pessimistic view. So that's a change in thinking to move people away from an optimistic viewpoint, right?
Yeah, and we also tend to think that the system is going to do its job in protecting us, that you guys, the IT security team, is basically watching over everything. And it's funny how much users lack in technical knowledge and in understanding where are the hot spots that hackers try to exploit from a technology perspective. So just because there is a firewall or there are softwares to detect all these malwares, it doesn't mean that you are no longer at risk. And studies have shown that after you update your cybersecurity malware detection softwares, usually people tend to behave in a very unsafe manner. That's because they trust that the system is going to do it for them.
Yeah, they're over-reliance on technology that we've actually sold them for years. You need antivirus, you need anti-malware. Now that they've got it, they're like, oh, well, the security guy told me I've got AV, I've got anti-malware, I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about anything. Yeah. So we've kind of, in many ways, InfoSec's kind of shot ourselves in the foot by, touting these technologies, and now they're no longer available, no longer effective for, 100% stopping anything. So, I'm saying that was a soapbox.
So those are very interesting concepts. I like it. By putting your organization at risk, you're putting your own livelihood at risk as well. How do you convey that message, though? I mean, how do you get it across to the people in the organization that, that's the message I'm trying to give you here?
Without using FUD, because I know like we were talking about at the beginning of the thing, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who were talking to management about Badlock and, oh man, it's so awful. It's got a website, it's got a name, it's got an icon, and management's like, oh my God, we got this thing coming. We don't even know how to protect ourselves against it. We just have to sit and wait. And then, the vast majority of arguments out there was that it's not really a big deal.
So I think there is a lot of work to be done around communication and informing people of the near misses, the attacks that we were able to counteract, the percentage of people who are compliant versus the ones who are not, and just bringing that awareness. So I find it very interesting that when we hear about a major cyber breach, that it takes me time to go on Google and basically find out the root cause of that cyber breach. And organizations are not very good at reporting back the root cause. So, for example, the target data breach, it was caused by a spear phishing email.
Well, and there's a shame aspect there too. You don't want to be a big company and go, well, we can't even we can't even keep our own people from, clicking on a link, or we can't even stop a web application from owning us. There's a bit of shame there involved.
And I completely understand. However, for your organization, bringing that awareness to the users and telling them that, look, these major cyber attacks have been caused by human error, or somebody did something that they were not supposed to do, it's going to help them realize that the risk is much closer than they think. And just like it happened to somebody else, it can happen to you. So it's basically counteracting those psychological biases that are the cause of the cyber breaches to begin with.
And how do you measure the effectiveness of your user awareness program?
I think the best way to do that is doing like your own internal penetration testing and keeping people on their toes, trying to send spear phishing emails. Also, it's not just about the technology. So, for example, for the healthcare industry, most of the cyber breaches are happening because people are leaving paperwork on their desks before they leave. So a clean desk policy is also something that's very relevant in other industries that's going to lead to basically electronic data thefts. And reinforcing those policies and basically patrolling the desks, are like at the end of the day, seeing who has followed and complied with the rules. Those are things that you're going to basically be able to measure the effectiveness of your messaging, and how much the users have become aware and they change their behaviors. It does take time to change an organization culture, but once it happens, that shift is usually long-term effect. It's not something that you're going to forget about. And you're going to do a lot of work up front. But once that shift had happened in the user's mindset and you have shaped the right behaviors, you are going to see a tremendous decline in human error and more behaviors that are driving the whole organization towards cyber resilience.
So do you sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
Do you have any success stories that you can share?
Yes. So in some organizations, they constantly do penetration testing. And the way they do it is either via email or via phone. And they're seeing a lot of decline because people have become very aware. And social proof concept is we report back on, here are how many people in your department have complied with cybersecurity, have successfully counteract a penetration testing attack. And people try to basically behave the same way as their colleagues. So you would see a less percentage of people making these mistakes.
And how do you get around the shaming of the, I guess, the victims, right? If they fall for an attack, and do you tell them they fell for an attack, or do you not communicate, hey, here's how you can do this better? Because there may be some resentment there.
Yes, you do tell them, but there is a way of doing it. So it's not about publishing the name and making that conversation public, but they need to be aware that they really came close to compromising the security of the organization. You absolutely need to let them know. So these penetration testing exercises usually would take the user to a website that has a message in there that says, you have fallen a victim of spear phishing. This is not a real attack, but this is what could have happened if this was a real attack. So it does, yes, there is shaming, but it's between the user and the screen. It's not being made public.
So no wall of sheep or anything like that, where you would set it up like a DEF CON or Black Hat, where, you know, haha, this guy clicked on a link. Nothing like that.
No, I would not do that.
Oh man. So you mentioned about coming in and that changing culture takes time. Obviously, you must have some kind of management buy-in when trying to change the corporate or the company culture. So assuming you have management buy-in, because I assume that's why you're coming in the first place, what is the first thing that you try to change? Is it a minor thing, like making sure people don't aren't piggybacking through doors, or what is an easy, quick thing that you try to do to get people to do a minor change to the culture?
So we usually start with the C-level. And the reason why I say that, it's because you cannot change the culture if your leaders are not modeling the behavior that you expect the users to act on. So we are seeing, yes, there is buy-in. Yes, the C-suite is aware that cybersecurity is extremely important and it can be very costly for the organization. However, we do also hear that the executive level usually don't have time to go and attend training. They don't necessarily comply with not using their own devices to do work. Everybody likes mobility, and we tend to use our iPads and our cell phones when we know that there is a high percentage of these devices that are not secure and not suitable for work-related tasks. So we start with the C-suite. Yes, there is buy-in, but what does that buy-in mean, and how does it translate in terms of behaviors? We also hear that there is a communication gap where the C-suite is saying, I don't understand cybersecurity. I don't understand the risk. I have a hard time quantifying that. So how do we get the IT organization communicate better with the C-suite so that they are heard, that the messaging comes across, and that they obtain the support that they are looking after? So,
and this is part of the. I was going down through the slides here, and that's why I asked the question about the quick win. Your organization ExpressWorks as a cyber resilience framework. Is that based around any kind of ISO standard, or is that like a proven method thing that they've done over the last 30 years?
So basically, this is our proven method. We have used it in different contexts and different areas of the businesses. And we start from the top, where we work with the leadership that get the buy-in and then model the right behaviors. And then we tackle the organizational capability components, such as what's your organizational structure? How are you going to set up this team to be up for success? What's going to be your operating model? How are you going to execute cybersecurity initiative? Do you have the right talent in place? We know there is a huge shortage of cybersecurity talent on the market, and it's only going to get worse. We also need to think about how do we keep this workforce ahead when it comes to the skills, the technical skills, but also the soft skills that we are seeing now are becoming more and more important for a cybersecurity professional to be successful, such as the communication skills, the management skills, to be able to get to the C-suite and get their buy-in and get their involvement. And also the culture, which is basically the whole framework around how the organization is going to act and react and become more cyber resilient.
So, I mean, you're mentioning communication there. Is it, does everybody go to a class and go, okay, here's how, your company speaks, or, this is how you interact with various people? Do you have communications courses, say, for InfoSec people to go, okay, this is how you talk to somebody who, has a naturally passive aggressive manner, or this is the, person who, may be perceived as a weak leader,
Yes. Just like we do some work around team effectiveness, bringing different people with their different personalities and their working style to work effectively together. It's the same thing when it comes to communication. Mm-hmm. How do you get somebody very technical to talk to someone who usually wants to know what's in it for me, as opposed to hearing the whole explanation around technical details? And this is where we are seeing more and more cybersecurity initiatives being framed as a risk, and they usually sit within risk management function in the organization. It's because that's the language that the C-suite responds better to, especially when it comes to huge financial losses incurred by cyber breaches.
Mm. So you mentioned organizational structure in your framework here. Does that mean that some companies may not have a proper organizational structure and they would have to move around various things, or maybe even add new positions? Or, I mean, is that what we're thinking here?
So not every organization has a cybersecurity standalone function. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on the nature of your business, the assets that you're trying to protect, your hotspots, and do you really need to have a standalone cybersecurity function, or would you have a delegate within each department? So it's really getting into understanding your business and what are the assets you're trying to protect, as opposed to focusing on just the IT systems. Uh-huh. So what asset I'm trying to protect, and where do these assets reside? And then that's going to drive basically who are the users who have exposure to these. So for example, if we look at the healthcare industry, you have 80% of the users who can access every single data in the system, even if they don't need all that data to do their work.
Sure.
So it's basically looking at those layers of details behind the user access, and where does your asset and the information you're trying to protect, and then setting up the whole organizational structure for your cybersecurity initiative.
Yeah. Is there some industries, I mean, you've been doing this for a few years, so you've probably gone the whole gambit, but are there any industries that are better at building a security culture than others? Or is there just some that are, just completely hopeless?
I think oil and gas, because of the whole safety notion, operational safety, they're much quicker at adopting to this. And we see basically physical safety and asset and information security are very similar concepts. So there is that level of awareness and the desire to protect and operate safely. But I don't think that basically the area of the business or the industry you're in is going to limit your ability to adopt a safer culture when it comes to cybersecurity. I think any organization can change.
Just the amount of time needed to make that happen?
The amount of time, understanding the culture that I have to begin working with, how quickly can people adapt and change? And this is, again, back to, well, what tools do I use to change the culture and train people and shape behaviors? So how creative can I get to make that change and make it very quickly and make something that's going to last?
So you mentioned what tools work in a specific culture. Can you give us an example of that? Are we talking like a more technical environment would be like interactive content, whereas say a more traditional medical environment would be like more sitting down, talking to people on how to be there? I mean, what kind of tools do you have at your disposal for that kind of thing?
So, for example, if I take oil and gas, I think basically things such as storytelling, reporting back on real life stories, and cyber breach attacks that have been caused by humans will work wonders on people. For other industries and other cultures where the jobs are more analytical, for example, developers, engineers, and things like that, I would use something like perceptual learning. So perceptual learning is basically a skill that we do possess as humans from the moment we are born. That's what makes a toddler recognize different letters, even if they don't necessarily know how to read words or like understand what letter that is. But the brain does recognize the different shapes and forms. So what we try to do with these people who are very analytical in their work is try and train these visual aspects of their brain to recognize these red flags. So focus on a link or an attachment. There are some emergency situation words such as action required, password, click on this link, and basically training that brain to literally hit the brakes, stop what you're doing, don't click on anything, and think before you act.
And that makes sense. And, I would assume the inverse is true. If a hacker is wanting to, spearfish, they're going to use these kinds of techniques as well. They're going to, obviously this is an arms race. So if you say, you building a better 419 scam. So in the Nigerian scams used to have all kinds of spelling errors, and now you don't see as many spelling errors. The delivery changes.
Yeah. So it's all about how you frame the attack, but it's also about how you frame your security messaging and communication to build stronger awareness.
So even inside the company, your delivery may change. You may end up having to start profiling people and go, okay, yeah, the engineers, we probably need to go with a more, analytical approach, whereas, the C-level folks are going to like hand puppets and, not hand puppets. I'm sorry, that was wrong. I probably shouldn't have used hand puppets. But they're going to use videos, or they're going to need a guy in a suit standing up there talking about how, all these breaches were bad. So even in your own company, you may have to use different deliveries on the same old video that everybody uses is not going to resonate with everybody.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of difficult.
Well, I don't think it's difficult when you have the right people working on this. And this is where it's very important to basically bring both the IT side of things and also the organizational side of things. So the people who understand the security and the technology part of it, and the people who are more aware of the culture and the motivation and what motivates users. So there is a partnership in there. We tend to point fingers at IT and say, cybersecurity is not my problem. IT is taking care of that.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing is the human is really in the middle of it. And every step of your security chain does involve human to a certain degree, whether it is when you are installing these firewalls, because the human error can come from an IT security professional who, for some reason, has forgotten to basically has mismanaged a patch or things to that effect, all the way to the people who are designing your training without necessarily understanding the audience and how it's going to get delivered to the user who basically is in front of the screen, and he has the power to either counteract an attack or basically compromise everything by making a mistake.
Okay. Well, what I was thinking about was, when you're a company and you're buying training materials for information security, one, it's just a checkbox thing mostly. And the other one is just, I've never actually seen, where a company would come in and do a multi-pronged thing. It's just usually a bunch of flash videos or slides where you just click to the end, do the 10 questions and you're passed and you're done. It's supposed to take 3 hours, but it takes me 20 seconds.
And those are not effective. So you need to customize your awareness program to that organization, that culture, the specific people you are talking to and you're trying to target.
Yeah. So it's a maturity thing. If you want to have a mature training program, you can either do the bare minimum, which is everybody watches a video, clicks, answers 10 questions, or they actually come in, you have, a more personalized experience.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of studies around, well, how much money and how much time are you spending on training? So even if most organizations have training programs, only half of them reinforce and require that training to be taken once a year. So, that sends a message that, you can get to security whenever you get to it. And that's how the user think about cybersecurity. Security gets in the way. It's something secondary. What I'm trying to do is I need to get my work done.
Okay. Well, obviously you just don't want to do one video a year or something. You need to definitely reinforce that. Or the place that Mr. Betcher and I used to work at, we actually, it was something our compliance guy actually thought of doing, was putting up posters, reiterating the whole security, the whole security idea.
So it's funny that you mentioned that. So speaking of posters, and this is where I said we really need to get creative. So there was an experiment that was done at a university where they had posted posters of eyes staring down at people, and they have noticed that the effect of those posters and the effect of having the illusion that something or somebody is watching you, people started cleaning up after themselves. So that whole experiment was shifted and applied in the healthcare industry in some organizations. And they have basically posted these eyes with some cybersecurity key messaging for awareness. And they have made sure that these posters are at eye level from the users. And they have noticed a shift in the users' behaviors.
Okay.
So something like this that is not very expensive can have tremendous impact on the users.
Okay, this is funny. I was listening to you, I swear, but I was also doing a search on Google for university posters, eyes staring at you, and they mentioned it back in 2013 at Newcastle University in England. A 2-year experiment. They put a picture, basically it says, "Cycle thieves, we are watching you," and it reduced the thefts by 62%.
Yes, I read that study as well. Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, I'm going to have to put that link in the show notes because that was pretty awesome.
So
yeah,
there
was
go ahead.
Yeah, there was also a study, I believe someone brought in breakfast, like free breakfast for everyone, and there was a tip jar. And they experimented with different pictures of eyes of different things, and certain eyes, people tipped more. And no eyes on the picture, people tipped up much less or none at all. Right. Okay. So yeah, that's definitely been a theme in several studies where it does dramatically affect human behavior.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, you'll have to send me that link if you can find it again, Mr. Betcher, because I'd like to read that one as well. So,
all right.
Well, I think we've gone.
Well, I got one more question.
Oh, you've got questions. Okay, I'm sorry.
How did we do on our last podcast? Where did we go wrong?
Was there something we got wrong?
I don't think. No, it was really good, very informative. The only thing that basically made me kind of like go, okay, you talked about doing these penetration testing and then focusing on the users who had fallen through the traps in terms of training. So that would be your target audience. So from my experience, anybody can be an insider threat. So I can give you 2 examples. So you have the user who is not very tech savvy and he has been trying to be compliant. However, for some reason, and probably because of technical knowledge, they tend to make mistakes. So I have seen somebody who had received a spear phishing email. It was a penetration testing. He basically looked at the email, thought about it. Then what he did is he had received the email to his work email account. He forwarded the email to his personal email account, and then he clicked on the link. So he thought he was not going to compromise anything from his work computer, and he was connected at the organization network, and he basically thought he was doing the right thing. So this guy, yes, you're going to be able to flag through penetration testing. However, there are other people who get a thrill at breaking rules. They are very tech savvy. They know exactly what they are doing. And those you may not be able to flag at all. And I have seen some of these users who got away with installing softwares, even if the whole basically computer and the rights to install additional softwares on your computer is locked down by IT, he was able to do it and bypass all these obstacles because he was very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And then again, we talk about the C-suite, the CEO frauds, and how the C-suite is usually an easy target. I mean, we're talking about $2 billion in loss over the last 2 years globally due to CEO frauds alone. So that's a huge number.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's only going to get worse because as they start targeting companies, because one, either you're too scared to question the CEO, even though it's coming from ceo.itsreallyme@gmail.com. That's a culture thing too. You've got to question the CEO if he's going to say, "Hey, please wire $80 million to this bank account in Hong Kong or whatever."
Yeah.
No matter if you might get in trouble, the right thing is to say, did the CEO really do this? Maybe I should get him on the phone and ask him that question before I send $80 million away.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So I want to give you 30 seconds to, if you want to talk about your company. I know that they've been around for a little bit. So if somebody was needing to change their culture to be more secure, are you a training company explicitly, or are you just a change management company? And I'm assuming it's not like a change management like ITIL or anything like that. It's changing the security culture of your company.
Yes. So we do a lot of things around change management. We do train, we do communication. We have organizational effectiveness or capability, practices, cybersecurity, and we basically specialize in changing humans' behaviors. We help organizations improve their adoption rate when it comes to new technologies. So it's much more wider than just training and communication.
Awesome. All right. So outside of your company, if somebody wanted to discuss with you about your topic that you gave at B-Sides Austin or whatever, how do they get a hold of you?
You go on our website, expressworks.com, and then you will be able to basically find our cybersecurity webpage, and my contact information should be there.
Okay. Do you have a Twitter or something, or is that all on there too?
It's on there.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Mr. Betcher, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to get a hold of you? Mr. Betcher? We seem to have lost Mr. Betcher. So you can get a hold of Mr. Betcher at BetcherPwned.
Sorry.
Oh, are you back now?
Well,
I'm going to leave that in, by the way.
Accidentally had it on mute because I had some background noise, the little urchins going around.
No, I understand. Go ahead and tell us how we can get a hold of you.
I'm at BetcherPwned on Twitter. And my website is IMF Security. You can email me from there.
Excellent. So the official BreakSec podcast email is bds.podcast@gmail.com. If you want to continue the conversation, you can either use hashtag BreakSec, BRAKESEC, or you can just tweet us at BreakSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me. I'm on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. Appreciate you guys, if you come on and tell us how much you love or maybe not love the podcast. We take all kinds of criticisms. We're on iTunes. If you want to hit us up on iTunes, we'd appreciate some feedback because right now we're in a battle against the defensive security folks over there for podcast of the year or whatever. So we know you guys are listening on iTunes. Please feel free to leave us some feedback. We'd love to see that. We're on Patreon. We believe in the value for value model. So if you are enjoying the content you've got it here in the past 8, 9, 10 weeks here, and you feel like you want to, give us a little tip, like a tip jar or something, please feel free to support us over there on Patreon. $1 up to a Brazilian dollars, if or not a Brazilian, but like $1 million if you want to. I don't, don't give $1 million, but $1 is fine, $2 is fine, but it helps defray some of the costs of Libsyn, which they charge me every month for. So, and we do appreciate the patrons that we do have right now, Sunny and all the others over there. We appreciate them. So, I think that's it. We're on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page. We're on TuneIn app. If you like internet radio, we're on TuneIn app or Player FM or the Google Store, podcast store. So that was it. So, Dr. Hend Ezzeddine, I appreciate you coming on. We tell all of our visitors, our guests this, but truly, we'd love to have you back on if you want to talk about anything else having to do with this. I find the concept of org behavior and security culture a very interesting one that I'm sure we have not even scratched the surface on yet. So I'd love to have you back on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. Have a great week, and we will talk to you again real soon.
Bye-bye.
And we're clear. That was awesome. Fantastic. Dynamite.
And I really like this topic because I think it's very important. There's all the stats on 90% of all breaches were started from the human element or social engineering and things. And I think it's tough to get across to people. I mean, to train them. Like if you have Bob from accounting and he can, Bob can account the crap out of his accounting stuff, but he doesn't know anything about command injection or cross-site request forgery, right? The technical aspects of security. So you can it's tough to get the message across in a way that he understands, and it requires a lot of tactics and strategy on your part as a security organization. So any education in that area to security teams around the world is highly valuable, I think, if they utilize it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we got to a point where we are designing an MBA for IT security because they kind of need to acquire that language and that skill set to be able to communicate with the C-suite and be able to be heard and people pay attention to what they are saying. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, there's a real lack of what I would call good security training companies or suites or software out there. I mean, everything is just, look at the flash video or look at the flash slides, click, do the survey, and you're done. There's hardly, it's either they don't want to spend the time investing in that, or there's a real lack of wanting to take the time to do so, because that would take extra time out of the day or the week, when you can do a 2-hour thing and check a box versus, you may need a 2-day in-service on how to properly handle a crisis with regard to email or, some people, it's just not a glamorous thing, but it's something that, we hear time and again from the red teamers. It's like, well, if I can't get in, I'll just send an email and they'll click on my link,
Yeah, that's not the way to do it. You really have to customize the training because, like I said, you're trying to shape behaviors. You're not trying to just teach somebody not to click on a link. It's different.
Yeah. I mean, and truly it is. And I didn't know if you guys had different tools in your arsenal. I mean, I just thought, a lot of times, a lot of people just want to do the bare minimum. So you guys will actually come in and do these kind of in-service things where there's multiple days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it usually come after a breach or something where email or social engineering was involved?
And there are people who are more on the preventive side. Mm-hmm. They're not waiting.
Okay.
So good. Because we work closely with oil and gas. I mean, these organizations are all about preventive measures. They're not reactive. They are more proactive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. But yeah, like I said, Hend, if you have, if you guys want to come back on, or if you want to bring one of your colleagues to discuss this, I mean, I would love to talk about it, because it really is truly, I have heard red teamers or pen testers go, well, if we can't find the vulnerability, we'll just send an email and they'll click on my link and whatever. And the thing is, that doesn't solve the problem by just going, well, we couldn't find any vulnerabilities in your environment, so we had the human element, break down the whole thing. If we can shore up the human element and make it stronger and make somebody go, should I click on the link that somebody sent me? Or should I not send $80 million to a bank in Hong Kong because my CEO sent me a Gmail saying so? I think I think that's a lot of the problem in the industry as a whole. I mean, I think a lot of breaches and a lot of that stuff will go down if we can, educate the users properly and not just, assume that one size fits all with regard to training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
And are you big on Twitter?
Not really, but I need to get into all that. Yes.
Yeah, I think you'll find a wide audience for your discussions. A lot of people were very happy with what we did last week with the training. Was I the one who said the thing about the people falling through the cracks on that? That was probably me, right? It always is.
I don't know.
Mr. Betcher, don't.
I mentioned you need to get your heavy hitters first, because what I see is you have those individuals that are constant, like the guy that installs TeamViewer, and you tell him, hey, we don't allow TeamViewer, please uninstall it. And then the very next week he gets hit with some browser hook or something like that. And then you get on his box to try and help him uninstall this browser hook, because he's having all these pop-ups and stuff. And you notice he's installed what's that online game that downloads the games for you? And you don't
Steam?
have to Steam. He's got Steam on, and he's got, registry cleaners and all kinds of crap. And it's this behavior like, why are you doing this stuff? And so there's 15 things you have to uninstall. It's those guys who need the training the most, I think, and the C-level too.
I think so too. Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
But we have a Twitter account for ExpressWorks, and that's what we usually use to tweet across the organization.
Yep.
What kind of things do you tweet? Like, hey, this might be interesting if you're trying to.
Yeah. So we bring awareness around cybersecurity breaches caused by human error. We do a lot of tweets around leadership development and coaching, because we have a lot of clients who ask for that. Mm-hmm. We have also a sustainability practice. We tweet about that as well. So it's anything that echoes our offering.
Yep. I just followed them. I actually just put out a tweet sending to ExpressWorks about your interview. Hopefully they'll retweet it for us. So awesome. Are you guys hiring? I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for a friend.
Yes, we have.
So do you do curriculum development as well?
For training, yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I've always thought that would be something I'd want to do, is curriculum training or curriculum development.
Really?
Well, because sometimes you get tired of wanting to try to chase the red team or chase the pen tester, because pen testers are a dime a dozen. It takes real skill to create curriculum or training that, one, will not bore people to death, two, is useful, and three, is sticks in people's minds and makes them want to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I worked with traders and engineers most of my career, and it taught me how to really be smart about communication, about training, because these guys don't have time to waste. So you have to be very quick, sharp, in everything you deliver to them. Yeah.
Yep. Very cool.
You just want to move to the Bay Area.
I don't want to move to the Bay Area.
You're a California guy.
It's awful. No, Bay Area sucks. No, I love Seattle. Seattle's an awesome place. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I have to get my daughter dinner. It's 6:15 here, so you guys need to probably head off too. Hend, really, truly, if you ever want to come back on, just bring some knowledge. I love having doctors on because it really classes up the podcast a lot. It's really, really nice to have people who are well learned on our podcast. So
thank you, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. All right, everybody have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.
All right, later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.